Hi, welcome to the Passionate Spinner podcast. Today is going to be a bit different, as you can probably tell from the backdrop. I talked about how I read a lot of books in August in my last normal making podcast. And I said that I would do a special episode about the books I read because it's just too long otherwise. So yeah, I'm going to do that now. So I brought my book journal, my reading journal, and in August I read 17 books in total. And I just wrote down a few stats. So I'm going to show you my reading journal first. This was my setup for August. And yes, I ran out of space. I don't mind. So that's the setup. And this is how I track my books. I write down the title, the author, how many pages it has, what genre the book is from, the form, is it a physical, an audio, or an ebook, and my rating. And for the first time ever, I needed 2 pages to write down all of the books. So let's go through them. Let's start with the stats. So I read 17 books in total in August. 4 of those were physical books, 3 ebooks, and 10 audiobooks. That's a total of 3,920 pages because most of the ebooks, the audiobooks were shorter ones. 8 of those books were German, 9 of them were English, which is a very high content of German books because usually it's way below that. 15 of them were fiction, 2 of them were nonfiction. And for the rating, I have 1 with no rating, and I'm going to tell you why. I have no 1-star, 2 2-star books, 6 3-star books, 6 4-star books, and 2 5-star books. So it was a relatively good reading month in terms of, quality of reading. In terms of quantity, I've never, ever been able to read that many books in a month. It's just mind-blowing. But I managed, so let's get into them. I'm going to use my journal here to talk you through, so I have to look over every now and then. So the first book I read this month was Highland Games. It was an ebook. That's why I brought my iPad, so I can show you the screenshot. This is what it looks like. It is by Evie Alexander, and this is a classic romance. A young woman inherits a cabin from her uncle in the Scottish Highlands, and she decides to just upend her life in London and go there and change everything about herself and go to live in the middle of nowhere in the Scottish Highlands. And once she gets there, things just aren't as great as she thought and as she had remembered, because she remembers the cabin from her past or from her childhood and is now basically fallen in, it's unlivable there. And she meets a very grumpy but very sexy Highlander, of course. And it's an enemies to lovers romance. It's a really good book. I gave it, as you can see, 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's a first one in a series. There are more books in this series, so if you're interested in it, it's a romance. It's a classic romance, with the classic tropes. The enemies to lovers, I think she's taller in this book, because usually when you read a romance, at least when I read a romance, I feel like every woman is teeny, teeny, tiny, super petite and small, and the guy is always gigantic, but muscly and hot. That's the same here. Gigantic, muscly, very hot, but I think she's not super tiny in this book, which is, at least a bit of a difference. But yeah, I enjoyed it. The stumbling stone, the 3rd act breakup was coming from 3 miles away, and it was not a very surprising reason. It was just the classic, just talk to each other people. That would be nice. But I feel like that also has to be part of every romance book, because it is in every romance book and there must be a reason for that. So that's that. After I finished reading that, I listened to Ellie Hazelwood's Stuck With You, and It is a novella. The author is the same author that who wrote The Love Hypothesis, and I really enjoyed that book. So she has 3 of those novellas of women in STEM, and this one was they were stuck in an elevator together for like an hour, and they had hooked up before and started a relationship basically, but something happened where they of course didn't talk to each other, and she was then super pissed and decided to not ever talk to him ever again, which, you know, is always the smart way to go. And yeah, it's like they are stuck in the elevator, but there are flashbacks to when they started dating kind of story. And it's short, it was okay, it was an audiobook. It's the second one that I listened to. I have one left. I think the last one is called Below Zero. I've listened to Stuck With You and something with a roommate. I don't remember. But yeah, it was okay. Then I started listening to the audiobook series that I have been listening to all year. And that's the reason why I have so many German books in my list this time. I'm listening to an audiobook series called Tee, Kaffee, Mord, which means tea, coffee, and murder. And it's only available in German, but they're very short. So they're like 4-hour audiobooks, 150 pages to 190 pages on average for the book version. And they come in a pack of 3 on Audible. So, you know, books 1, 2, and 3 for 1 credit and so forth. So I've been listening to them this year, and I listened to 6 of them this month because they are so short, and that's why. So first one I listened to was called Der Besuch der reichen Dame, which means the visit of the rich woman, basically. Where is it? Here it is. No, it's not. I think I didn't even screenshot that one. Doesn't matter. They all look the same, basically. Oh no, there it is. It is the one that I was looking for. So, like I said, these are very short. They are by Ellen Barksdale, which does sound like an English name, but has to be a pseudonym because the books are only available in German. And they take place in I think it's a fictional town somewhere in England. And let's just say, I think those books in themselves are good books, but they would benefit from 50 to 70 pages more per book, because sometimes you just feel like everything is just happening too quickly, too conveniently, and they find out who did it too easily without any clues given. And that is my big problem with this series. I am listening to it, and I had listened to 18 of them so far this year, because they're super easy to listen to and they're quick. And I kind of like the characters, but I felt like there was just something missing in every one of the books. So I gave that one 3 stars. And then I read another book. I read Theirs for the Night by Katie Robert. I'm going to show it to you so you can actually see. This is a novella. It has like 70 pages. And it is erotica, which I wasn't quite aware of. But it's basically about a young girl. I'm sorry, my eye is itching. I have to take care of it. So it's about a young woman. It's like beginning of her 20s. And she goes out with her colleague, and then she meets these 2 guys and ends up going home with them. And that's basically what's happening. And I decided to read that one because Katie Robert has written a book series that everybody is raving about called Neon Gods, where it's like, it's a Hades and Persephone retelling, and everyone loves it. But I was kind of on the fence because I haven't read the author before and I didn't know if it was for me. So I wanted to try a novella and ended up reading this little porn book here that I did not really enjoy because there was nothing to this except for smut scenes, which are okay. I don't mind them. you know, but if the only thing that's happening is that and nothing else around it, I'm quite uninterested in it. So yeah, I will probably not continue with this author. So the next thing, I listened to the next one in the Tee Kaffee Mord series. And this one's called Die sprechenden Bücher der Miss Rittinghouse, oder Miss Rittinghouse und die sprechenden Bücher, which means Miss Rittinghouse and the talking books. And I don't even know if I should tell you what these books are about, because the majority of you will not be able to read or listen to them. It's basically about a woman who inherits a pub with a cafe and a hotel complex thing in a little English town called Earl's Raven. Her name is Natalie. She inherits this from her aunt, and her cook is an ex-spy. Her name is Louise. She used to work for a secret government agency. We never learn what agency that is because it's secret. It's also convenient because if it's secret and no one knows anything about it, you don't have to actually make it up. And yeah, the cast of characters keeps growing, and so it's Natalie, the owner of the pub, and her cook, Louise, and then her boyfriend later on, and Louise's boyfriend later on, and the coroner and his girlfriend, and Miss Rittinghouse. She is the local bookstore owner. She starts to become a part of this group as well in this book, basically, where it is a murder that happens, and that person was an avid book collector, and so she gets asked about the books. So yeah, and they continue to solve crimes that are continuously happening in this small town. So that's that one, you know, it's basically the same thing all over and over and over. The next one, also from this series, called Ein Doppelgänger zu viel, which means one too many doppelgangers. It looks like this. Another 3-star, because they're okay, you know, they're not good, they're not bad, they're okay. And this one, I'm not going to tell you, just let's gloss over all of these. Next one, another one of those, Das Geheimnis des toten Anwalts, which means the secrets of the dead lawyer. Another one that was okay, but you know, they're all just resolve so easily and conveniently that it is just unbelievable. And like I said, it feels like those books are just 100 pages too short. Then I listened to an audiobook from a series that I am listening to through Kindle Unlimited Audio, and these are classic crime novels, like classic British crime novels, and they are by J.R. Ellis. And they are called the Yorkshire Murder Mystery Series. And I am listening to those. They are narrated by an English man, like a British man. And he does a great job. I really enjoy these. So this is The Murder at Redmeyer Hall. And I think it was the 3rd book in the series. And this is about a locked room. It's a locked room murder mystery. And I really enjoyed it. I'm not going to tell you anything about it. It's a locked room murder mystery. That's all I'm going to say. The next one I listened to, another one in this series, was called The Royal Bath Murders, or The Royal Bath Murder. This takes place in Yorkshire. I'm not quite sure where. But this time a famous author who's kind of a dick, to be honest, gets murdered in a bath. And yeah, it's a crime novel festival where he is a key speaker and he gets murdered. And there's a lot of people who had a motive because he was a dick. Like, we get to see him before he gets murdered, and I was like, oh my God, you're a horrible person. But well, that resolved itself. So once I finished that, I read another book on my Kindle this time. Now, where is it? It was the first 5-star book of the month. It was called Wolfgang Wild. It's by Juliet Cross. It is the first book in the Once Upon a Spell, Stay a Spell. I think they're called Stay a Spell series. So this book here is about a werewolf called Matteo who has problems shifting into his wolfy self. And it's causing him a lot of problems. And he seeks help from a witch who is a curse breaker, hex breaker. And she is one of 6 sisters. I think there are 6 sisters. And construction noises. I really hope you cannot hear them. So this is Evie. She is the second oldest of the Savoy sisters. I don't know if that's correct. The story takes place in New Orleans or New Orleans. No, I'm also not sure about that one. But of course they fall in love because this is a paranormal romance series about those sisters. This is the first in the series. There are 4 books out right now, and I want to read all of them because I love this one so much. Matteo was the perfect hero for a romance novel. He was just so sweet, and Evie, who is a complete nerd, and yeah, she tries to help him and it doesn't work out, and then they find out that this hex that has been put on him is so much worse than they expected. And I had my suspicions who was the bad witch, you know, the baddie behind everything, but I was off, which was interesting, but it made a lot of sense. So it was just a really wonderful book. I loved everything about it, and I'm definitely going to finish the other books. And this one also was on Kindle Unlimited, so I try to use that as much as possible. Now, the next one was an actual book. And this is the one that I didn't give a rating to because I just don't feel like this is a book that you can rate. So I read The Story of Classic Crime in 100 Books by Martin Edwards. And last year or 2 years ago now, I don't even remember when I started this, I was kind of on I want to read all of those classic crime novels, you know, Agatha Christie and Dorothy L. Sayers and whoever. And I ended up never doing that. What I did instead was I read this book. And this is divided in chapters. Like chapter 4 is play up, and play the game. And so it's like a subgenre in this classic crime genre. And then it talks about books that fit the bill and that work with this. So it's about 100 books in total, as the title says. And I read this every now and then, but I finished it this month. And I think it took me 2 years, but I didn't rate it because I really don't think that this is a book you can rate. I mean, it's a book about books. So yeah. I read it, it was interesting, but I'm going to get rid of it because I'm never going to read it again. Why should I? That's the end of page 1. Now let's turn over. Next up, we have 2 more actual books. So the next thing I finished was Untamed, and that is a book by Glennon Doyle. It is another nonfiction. These are my 2 nonfiction books. This book, I gave it 4 stars. It was a really good book. It was a hiccup, sorry. It's basically a book that tells you to stop believing everything society has told you about how women should behave and what women should be doing, and start listening to your own inner self again. And I really enjoyed it. But one thing that this book does, and that another book that I read this year did, and that was called I don't even remember. It was a book by Brene Brown, and both authors are Christian, and that's good for them. But a lot of the times it was just, and then you talk to God and he will give you the answer. And that just doesn't work for me because I'm not a Christian. I used to be when I was young. I'm not anymore. So every time that is in a self-help book or the answer is ask God and he will help you, that just won't work for me. So it doesn't help me in that way. That's why I gave it 4 stars. Otherwise, a really good book. I have one section marked here, and that was something that really, really, really resonated with me. And I'm not going to read it to you because I don't think I'm allowed to. But yeah, if you happen to get your hands on this, I can highly recommend reading it. I especially recommend the chapter called Erica's, like a multiple of Erica. It was a really good book. And it's not the author's fault that I'm not a Christian. So, you know, the next book is also a physical one. My second 5-star read, and that is My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey. I really like Tessa Bailey. I think she's I'm an idiot, apparently. I think Tessa Bailey is a lover or hate her author, at least from all the reviews that I've heard. I read It Happened One Summer by her last year, and I loved it. And now I read My Killer Vacation, and I loved it. I gave both of those 5 stars. And I do have Hook, Line, and Sinker, which is the second one to It Happened One Summer. And I also have a trilogy of hers. So I'm really looking forward to reading those. Okay, My Killer Vacation. There's a book about, what's her name? What was she called? Taylor. I think her name was Taylor. Taylor, a small, petite woman, of course, goes on vacation to Cape Cod with her brother, who has been recently heartbroken about something. And she's a teacher. And they arrive in their house, and not shortly after that, they find a dead body. And so police comes and everything happens, and then the sister of the deceased decides to hire like a private investigator, who is not a private investigator but a bounty hunter, but he's a friend of a friend, so he's going to do it for her. And he arrives, and he is Miles. And Miles is super big, super muscly, very hot, but in a not so obvious way. And with a traumatic thing happened to him in the past. And together, these two try to find the murderer. I really liked it. Apart from the whole cliches that the guy always is super tall, super hot, has the body of an Adonis, and the woman is always teeny tiny, small, and there's always a conversation of if she's too small for him, if you get what I mean. In every romance book where that is the trope, where she is tiny and he is gigantic, it's always the same talk. As a woman who's not super tiny in either way, I would love to read a book where the heroine of the book is a tall woman who has a bit of fat on her, you know? I keep reading about books, or I keep reading books about super, super tiny women. And there are other women out there as well. And not every man on the planet is super chiseled and super tall. So that is something that keeps getting a bit old for me at this point, because I have been reading so much romance this year and last year. But apart from that, if you can just skip over that, I really liked it. I really did. It's a good one. So now what's next? Okay, then we have 3 more of those audiobooks, those German ones. First one is called Ein Spion kommt selten allein. There's always more than one spy, I would say. It's a loose translation. And it's about Louise's past. We never find out what the agency is called she worked for or what they do. But it's about her past because one of her ex-colleagues stumbles into the pub, delivers a parcel for Louise, and then dies there. So that's the premise of this one. Next one is called Der Puppenmörder von Hunters Grove, so the doll murderer of Hunters Grove, where it's winter and someone puts mannequins in frozen lakes. So people are freaking out because they think they find dead bodies, but it's a mannequin. But it's always a mannequin so often before it's an actual human body. So that's that one. And the last one is called Die gestohlene Braut. And that one, I mean, this one only got 2 stars because it was just so dumb. And the last one, The Stolen Bride. That was just, from the first page on, I knew exactly what happened. And that happened, you know. No, that was, the last 2 were just really bad. So I'm questioning if I want to continue with this series because, on the other hand, I'm 18 books in at this point. So, you know, I really don't know if I want to go on or not. And then the last book I read in August is another book I can show you. And this is a book that I read aloud to my child. It is called Ein Fall für Katzendetektiv Ra, der große Grabraub. So this is a translation, so I can tell you what it's actually called. So this is actually called Ra the Mighty, the Great Tomb Robbery. It's a book by Amy Butler Greenfield, and it is a very cute children's book. It's a thick one. So this is about Ra, and he is the cat of the pharaoh in old Egypt. And his best friend is a dung beetle, and they go and solve crimes together. And this is the second book that I read aloud to Tim this year. We read both of them within 5 days or so. And he absolutely loves those books. They're amazing. There's a third one coming out in November, and he asks me, I think, every other day, is it out yet? Is it out yet? I was like, is it November? No, it's not. So please stop asking. Yeah, it's super cute. So Ra is the cat of the pharaoh, and he is super arrogant. It's like, I am the most prettiest cat in all of Egypt, and I am majestic, and I am regal, and I am wonderful. And his best friend is a dung beetle who just loves rolling around in dung. And it's really fun. It's funny, and the crime itself is very interesting. It's very good. They leave clues throughout, so you can actually guess who is the culprit, you know. And yeah, I think the official age for this is 8 through 11 maybe. My son is 7, but he really likes them. So I think the problem, or why it is marketed to older kids, is because if they want to read it themselves, this is a bit too much text on a page for a first grader. So, but read to him, he adored these. So this was the last book I read in August. And that is it. 17 books finished. September hasn't been that great so far. I only finished 1 book. But I really hope to finish more because I am loving my books again. And I think that is it for today. Maybe you have suggestions on books that you think I would love, and maybe you know of a romance book where the heroine isn't teeny tiny and the hero isn't the large chiseled grump. And yeah, I'm gonna say goodbye. This was a bit different, but I thought there's a lot of you out there who love to read as well, so why not do this together? And if I ever have a reading month where I read that many books, so it's actually worth doing a separate video, I will definitely do it again. And until then, I will see you in the next video. Bye!